The entire screen printing process all starts with preparing artwork to be printed onto a film positive that can then be used to burn a screen to create our stencil that we can then print with on the actual press. Now again, it all starts with getting the artwork prepared for printing. Now when it comes to screen printing, the artwork must be a type of digital file artwork. You cannot just take anybody's hand-drawn piece of art and just want to go start screen printing it. You need to be able to take it into some type of artwork program like Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, or Corel Draw, in which you can then prepare the artwork for actual printing onto films. And if it's a multiple color design, it's going to definitely need some registration marks and so forth so we can align color to color on the actual press as efficient as possible. Now, when it comes to preparing digital artwork, it is very important that you understand essentially the basics that artwork comes in one of two file formats. I wouldn't call them file types, and that is either a vector format or a bitmap, also referred to as a raster format. Within these two types of formats, there's all types of file types, including JPEGs, PNG, SVG, EPS, all of which some are typically either a bitmap or a vector file type. Some of them actually can be used for both. Now, when it comes to the biggest difference between a vector and a bitmap image, besides the fact of how they are created, is the fact that one is using lines and curves, which is a vector, and in which every color in the artwork is being trapped. And it makes it very easy to identify how many and to be able to separate each color within the design. Also, because vectors are made up of lines and curves, they're much easier to scale, so we can make them larger or smaller without losing any image quality whatsoever. A bitmap image, on the other hand, is made up of a bunch of dots, essentially pixels, that are all coming together to create the artwork. Now, the problem with these pixels is they are not good at scaling, because when you scale something, you might have heard the term pixelation, or something become pixelated, and that's when something's made bigger that was once smaller. And the second being, you can't separate the colors as well, because all those little dots, they essentially come into shades of gray, or essentially when there's one color sitting next to another, there's going to essentially be a range of shading in between the two that doesn't allow you to separate the two colors anywhere near as well as if it was a vector. Now, that is not to say a bitmap image is not possibly screen printed. Bitmap images, as long as they are designed at a high resolution, at the exact print size, and are in layers and transparent, they can often be used for screen printing, even multicolor designs. But if the colors sit next to one another, which is called butt registration, then you're going to want to be working with a vector. Vector artwork, again, is much easier to scale, it's much easier to color separate, and then more importantly, sometimes we need to make adjustments to the artwork itself. Every single order is going to be different as far as how the artwork needs to be manipulated so that we can put out essentially the best possible film and then screen to print the artwork. Now, when it comes to registering multicolor designs, you must print registration marks on the film itself, so that needs to be in the artwork when you're printing it. And the second is you must understand the difference between choking and stroking the artwork. When two colors sit next to one another, we want to make sure that we have as much play, or essentially we've got a little room for air. And by doing that, how to do that is we essentially choke or stroke the artwork. Choking the artwork will essentially make the entire artwork just a tad bit smaller. It's essentially applying an outline around the entire artwork that is essentially transparent, and that's how it's making it smaller. Versus stroking the artwork actually adds an outline to the artwork to make it thicker, so that when it's sitting next to another color, they have just the slightest bit of overlay instead of just touching one another. Again, by creating a stroke layer, you're essentially going to allow the end screen printer to have much more room for air on the actual press and make printing the job much, much easier. Now again, every piece of artwork needs to be addressed differently, and that is why it's always a good idea for your artist to communicate with the individual in charge of printing. It's very important that those two are on the same page and that they know how the job's going to be printed and what films are going to be used and so forth. Another very important part of preparing the artwork is knowing the actual print order it's going to be printed on the actual press. Knowing the order is very important because you sometimes are going to lay ink on top of one another, and knowing which one is to be printed first to last is very important. There are, again, many different aspects that go into creating a perfect film for creating your stencil to then print the artwork onto the product. It all starts with making sure that digital artwork is properly prepared, and the more you understand how digital artwork is prepared and works, the better off you'll be. Even if you outsource all of your vectorization, you still need to understand how to choke and stroke artwork, and the more you understand, the better your prints will come out. If you have any questions on how to prepare artwork for screen printing, please do not hesitate contacting us. Thank you.